My name is Ana Domingo. I will be moderating this panel. And what I do is placemaking with purpose, but this is not the purpose today here, is to talk about marketing strategies. And I'm so glad to have these amazing speakers. So before you introduce yourself, one thing that we will note, if you were here in the kickoff introduction yesterday, we were talking about the squares and circles and triangles and Z's. So I will volunteer, I am a Z. And I will be delighted to know what is your own shape and what it leads to. We all learned the Z's are the ones that they like to go to the cocktail, and apparently they are not on time. I totally dispute that. And and then after that, the first question that I will address would be, what are the most important considerations when designing your strategy for 2025? Of course, that's what we want to all know about, right? So without more ado, Nancy Jones.
Hello, Nancy Jones, SVP of Marketing and Digital for Crescent Hotels and Resorts. And I had a really hard time with the shapes because I was somewhere between a triangle and a Z. So I was trying to get to the top and also ready for the cocktail party, it sounded like. So a little bit of both.
And Phil Koserowski, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, leading hotels of the world. I would guess I'm probably best as a circle, but maybe moments of Z, if I can make that happen as well.
I'm Matthew Evans of Evans Communications, and according to what Shane said, I'm a triangle, which means I supposedly want to take over the world, but I really don't.
Excellent. So let's start with, this is a question for all again. What are your most important considerations when designing your marketing strategy for 2025 as we are in December? So I'm sure it's pretty much all outlined.
It is baked. The first thing that I would say for everyone is be ready to continue to make adjustments, because if you're in marketing at all, every system you're using is changing right now. They're trying to all add AI. Everything is moving. Some of it is moving in the right direction. Some of it, we're still seeing some challenges with AI and what it's really bringing through. So really stopping and taking some time to really test and learn. But for us, it's data, making sure that the data is clean and making sure that the data is usable so that we can really get down to those personal preferences.
What about for yourself, Philip?
Did you ask if it was baked? Yeah, I don't know that I should take a step back. How many of you know leading hotels of the world? Understand who we are? Because it's a little bit important for context perspective. So we're the largest independent luxury hospitality brand in the world. We have over 400 hotels in more than 80 countries. 100% of our hotels are five-star luxury. 90% are independent and 80% are family-led. And what I think makes us special is that we're actually owned by about 60 of our member hotels. So at the end of the day, our reason for being is to help our member hotels stay independent and provide the marketing, distribution, expertise, everything we can to help make that happen. And from a brand perspective, we're all about remarkable quality. So we're super selective. We get about 600 or so hotels that approach us every year that want to be members. We typically admit about 5%. And then it's about the remarkable individuals, so the people that create the service ethos on property, the GMs, the teams that really bring the service experience to life, and then remarkable experiences. How does all that translate into creating remarkably uncommon experiences for our customers? So getting to the question about our marketing strategy, years ago we used to have a editorial calendar that we would probably finish up in Q3 of the current year, and it would lay out, here's everything we're doing for the full year. For many different reasons, we had to throw that away during COVID. But also, we evolved how we work. We work in much more of an agile fashion now. Yes, we have plans, but as Nancy said, you have to be ready to adjust for sure. But the other side of Agile is not just about programming and development. It's about listening to customers and having an open dialogue and constant feedback loop. So the priority for us starts with our customers, understanding what's driving them, understanding their needs, and then being able to pivot and introduce marketing strategies, product strategies in order to meet their needs. So starting with the customer is huge. I'd say second, digital transformation is just going to continue to accelerate. And the challenge I think we all face, number one, is our guests are bombarded with cool new ways, new digital experiences, and we tend to be a little bit laggards in our industry about how quickly we adopt, but their expectations are already there. And second, as Nancy mentioned, there's so many great new technologies that can drive digital transformation that are available to, it's from the gamut. From a marketing perspective, how can we personalize a specific communication to when that guest arrives on property, how can we meet their expectations to deliver them a personalized experience? So I'd say the personalization, incredibly important as a means of what we can deliver from a technology perspective. And then probably lastly, with all these opportunities, it's about content. I think we're going to need to spend a lot more time and effort into developing content than we've ever done that in the past, because that's what's resonating with consumers. That's what helps create immersive experiences during inspiration, and it's also what answers like a very simple question when someone calls and says, I need to know what type of swimming pool do you have? Can I do my Olympic laps in the pool? Or something like a real small detail. So investment in content, I think, is something everyone needs to be thinking about because it powers everything else that ultimately builds out the customer experience.
Matthew, following the same question.
So I'm going to put it in context by explaining what my agency does. We specialize in luxury, premium, and prestige branding, marketing, and communications, specifically in travel, hospitality, food, wine, and spirits, and lifestyle. The clientele of our clients are some of the most discerning, demanding consumers that one can have. What we tell our clients is very simple. Number one, make sure you have the data to really understand who your client is, but not just from a demographic standpoint, but because demographics aren't going to tell you anything. What are the psychographics? Because all of these customers out there have left a trail of social media that can be scraped, analyzed, from which you can get invaluable insights. Because in the luxury space, this is not about push. This is not about pushing something through to the customer. This is about engagement. This is about, if what ultimately you're selling at the end of the day is a hotel, that's not the answer. You're selling an experience that starts from the first touch point in that communication cycle. So if that communications isn't experiential, it will end there. So client many, many years ago taught me something that I think is even more important today than it was when he first taught it to me, which was something called seeded organic self-discovery. I said, what does that mean? He said, basically, leave a trail of breadcrumbs for your target to find, and they'll follow it, but the difference is they'll feel like they discovered it, they owned it. It's empowering. And for the audiences that we all cater to, they want to be empowered, they want to be enlightened, they want to be inspired. They don't necessarily want to be sold. So the key for what we all have to do is make sure that, to your point, Phil, content is critical. Data analytics and the insights that you glean from that is absolutely critical. Understanding the psychographic, not the demographic, is probably the most important thing. Meaning, we were talking before about ultra high net worth, high net worth. What it comes down to is not how much money they've accumulated, but how do they spend the money they have? And how can you become a part of that spend through the right marketing processes.
Do have many, many questions and a script, but obviously with just the amount of content that you just deliver in this first question, it just opens an immense, you know, opportunity for me to even ask more questions. And I'll start with Philip. So we talk about experiential, and obviously this is like the buzzword of the world for the past 10 years and so on. I mean, and at Puzzle, we primarily deliver experiences on the placemaking, but the experiences in luxury, at the end of the day, it's a total different thing. And following Matthew's thought in the content, right? In the content and the diversification of the channels that we have, this is one of the things that I observe about content is key. Keep the quality of the content. The other stuff is just, okay, you place it in the right place. But when it's the experience, you cannot go that fast, right? Because you might create an experience. So how are you adapting to this amount of different audiences that you might have about these different mindsets? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think talking about experience and what our very discerning customers are looking for, I think it starts with the authenticity. And we're in a very fortunate situation in that, as I said before, 80% of our members are family owned. They've been in the destination for years, sometimes generations. They've been part of the community. We had done some research with about 100 travel advisors and luxury travelers. We're in the midst of basically redoing our whole digital ecosystem, and we wanted to get into the depth of the psychographics and what was behind them. And an interesting insight they shared. First, they said, like, during inspiration, there's so much content out there. There's just bombarded, whether it's influencers or brands or ratings websites or all these other places. And many of them actually said, you know, it's tough to know what to trust. And there's so much on the line for them to have an amazing experience that trust is critically important. And what they shared with us is that we're more likely to trust someone that we feel knows the destination, is of the destination. And for us, that's our GMs, that's our concierges. It opens up an amazing opportunity because they authentically are in the destination, they know it, they've lived it. So from a social media perspective, we've introduced different content series where we go to some of our prominent GMs and say, give us what's 3 days like in your destination? Where would you recommend? Sure, the hotel's gonna be part of it, but there's gonna be things that are not on property as well. And that we've seen the engagement on those types of posts, that type of storytelling, but from a trusted local, performs significantly better than other things that we do. So I think we're lucky we have the remarkable individuals that have that authenticity. And then the challenge for marketers is really just how do we get the experiences out of their heads into formats that are immersive and consumable in social media, on a website, in an email, whatever the channel might be.
Can I add something to what Phil said? You're also doing something that's critically important. A hotel, by its nature, is an inanimate object. You're humanizing it by utilizing the GM and or key staff. Because at the end of the day, when you check out of a hotel, do you remember the architecture? Maybe, maybe not. Do you remember the design? Maybe, maybe not. Do you remember the wonderful person that interacted and engaged with you? Yes, you do. You remember the people. And people is the core of hospitality because it's a passion play. And you're not going to get that through traditional marketing methods. So I think you're absolutely right that that's a great way to engage. I also think that, you know, one of the things that's important when you're doing targeting is understanding that each individual is an individual. Each person is unique. How can you tease out, before you ever communicate or engage with them, what it is they're going to respond to, what it is that will engage them and pique their curiosity? Because if you create curiosity, That's the most important catalyst in the process, because then they can take it from there if you have the right tools. And pique their curiosity, not intellectually, but emotionally.
I agree with you when you say pique the curiosity, and I think there's some resources that we don't use as much as we should. One of those are the people that are actually in your building, so very similar to you, Phil. We found that we had some really talented people around our different properties. For example, at PGA National Resort, we have a beekeeper. So there is a beekeeping experience. People get to do it as a family or a small group, go into the beekeeping, and be able to experience what that's like on the golf course at PGA National Resort and be able to pull that through to where they're actually eating some food at the end that has some honey from the bees. Connecting all of the dots is really important. But one of the other things that I'd say that is incredibly important is your connection to the community. How do you get your community involved? If your community is connected to you, they're your best word of mouth, right? They're the ones that their friends call and say, where should I stay? What should I do? What's important to me? And it's that community piece. So find ways to not only connect with your guests, but also connect with the community. And this is another way where at one of our properties, we pulled in a mixologist who's really great. Great on social media, by the way, too, which is fantastic, becomes our own little influencer. And, you know, we started these classes and we did one and it sold out really fast. We're like, wow, okay, that was great. So now we're doing them on a regular basis and it has really become part of the community. The community invites more community to come and it sells out as soon as we open it. But there's not just mixology, there's so many different things you can think of. You may have somebody that is just absolutely excellent at painting, but maybe they work in your engineering department and you don't know. Find those resources, find their passions, and find a way to connect with your guests through that way, and then pull it in through the marketing resources.
Yeah, I love that actually. You've said a number of interesting things there. I do think as marketers, sometimes there is the challenge of like, okay, how do you commercialize or how do you merchandise this? And like the beekeeping example, we have another one of our hotels in Switzerland, the Bergenstock. They created an experience that we call our Leaders Club exclusive. So it's only for our loyalty members. They're the only ones that could get this. And it is combining a lot of the magic that you talked about, the local community with an experience that others can't have and a way to experience the beautiful destination that's authentically connected to it. So they'll actually pick you up in a helicopter from the hotel, take you to the Cyrus watch factory, where you can sit with one of the watch creators. You can make a custom timepiece, and then they fly you back up to the hotel to have a wonderful dinner overlooking the countryside. So that's where like the magic of the local community and, you know, Swiss watchmaking totally makes sense, with then the experience that is only available to those that have demonstrated loyalty to the brand. And then we've made a brand marketing offer out of it. So we're commercializing it in a little bit more of a way. But obviously that's not the lead, but you have to, at the end of the day, you got to make some money as well. So it's an important way to execute it.
I think there's another thing that you're doing with that. And it started when you talked about Nancy community. Okay? When you create a sense of exclusivity, but not in a condescending way, it is going to pique people's interest. Then you talk about access. You get the community engaged, but what you're also doing is your overarching element is culture. Because what we're seeing is we're seeing this cultural thirst movement where people go, they want to become embedded in the culture. And so if you can combine community, culture, and content with a degree of access and exclusivity, is it a formula? No. But it is something that will catalyze engagement.
It's certainly.
Oh, I was going to say, I can't agree more, but each and every one of you, your guests are coming to you for a reason, right? Find a way to connect them to your community, your culture, the things that are happening. Make it exclusive, make it interesting, make it one of a kind, something that somebody can't get somewhere else, That's where you'll win.
And then in these notes, I mean, talking about this exclusivity and the advancement, and obviously AI is in part of the questions that we have today. But today, one of the things that other professionals were sharing is that the authentic luxury is becoming the human interaction. At the end of the day, I don't know how many of you, maybe it's a generational issue. It's a call center, and you want a human being responding. You want that one-to-one, really understanding. You don't want a bot. You don't want a robot, maybe for a show purpose, yes, but the authenticity, this obviously exclusivity through human interaction, I think is critical. And that leads me to how in this omnichannel, a strategy that all of you might have, how are you researching to understand how to better get there? Nancy, how much is that research embedded in the feedback of your customers towards building your next strategy?
So it's so important to where we're going. So important to where we're going. That omnichannel is a buzzword that's been around for a while and been probably poorly used in most cases. If you think about how you connect with a customer and how you pull it all the way through from the very beginning to the end, most strategies don't do that. Somewhere along the line, you break that communication and you jump outside of what that customer was looking for, the goal of where they're going. So I think you have to put that data together and really be thoughtful with each thing you do. Similar to you, we're doing a lot of changes with our systems right now. Those system changes are allowing us to really kind of continue to go to the next level, but we're not looking at what we want to do next year. We're looking at what we want to do 5 years from now and what we think is going to happen and where we want to be so that we have the right tools and resources in place. But it is that omni-channel marketing. It shouldn't feel different if it's an email or a text. And if it is, there are people that do want to reach to a chatbot. Is your chatbot good? Does it talk your language? Does it really speak the way that you want the customer to hear? And there are people that are going to want to pick up the phone because I want to know about my tea times and what about my golf and what about the spa and tell me the details about the different room types, and they want to have that communication. So I think you have to be where the people are and let them decide which channel you want to come through.
Yeah, I think the way that we view our digital transformation, there's some hardcore business goals: driving additional revenue, creating more efficiencies, making back of house better, more optimized, and then creating an uncommon guest experience. The one thing you said, it's not, to me, it's not a chatbot or not chatbot because in person is better. We speak to our members about how can you use technology to take care of all the transactional stuff to allow you to spend more time building a relationship. And this started years ago. We introduced a mobile app. We gave our members the ability, if they want, to do digital check-in, and there was a lot of pushback. Well, no, that's a crucial time for me to spend time with the customer. They're coming onto my property. I don't want them bypassing me and going up to the room. And that's not the intent. The intent is, do you have to sit there and collect the passport? Do you have to collect the credit card? You have to have them sign certain things and rewrite the email that you already have in some systems. No, that's the type of thing where you can use technology to get that out of the way. So you spend more time walking the property with them, asking questions. What are you looking for out of this stay with us? So I think from that perspective, technology and people can absolutely coexist. And you're right, for younger generations, they might rather not have those conversations, and they might want to use more of a digital solution. So that's something that could be offered. But from our perspective as a brand, we don't mandate to our members, you need to do it. It's more about what's your vision for the service experience you want to create on property, and then can we provide the technology to do that?
And I'm going to sort of bring together what you both said, which is, number one, omnichannel simply means that you have a multitude of platforms to use, but you don't want to create the same story in every platform because it's redundant. What you do want to do is, if you think of chapters in a book, each channel has its own piece of the story because you want to still create that sense of curiosity. So it's it's a form of omni-channel self-discovery, but it shouldn't be duplicative. The other consideration, to Phil's point, is, when you're talking to a guest, this is high touch takes precedence over high tech. Because in the world of luxury hospitality, high tech can facilitate. High tech can give you insights, data, so that you can understand your guest incredibly well. But it's not going to replace the human-to-human relationship, which is what is key to luxury hospitality.
So interesting, and especially I'm going to throw a curveball here. Some of you, we had this conversation prior. Some of you here in the audience, you might have seen recently, it's not a hospitality brand, but a major luxury brand. Jaguar did a huge rebranding, a new teaser campaign talking about the chapters and the different story of unveiling a story. And it made me think, as your perspective of this brand, right, and the fact that they did something that got the world buzz talking. They finally unveiled what it was about. And then the major thing is what happens to all of our marketeers at the end, the metrics. What is the right metric? It's going to say, oh, we were in all the covers of the magazines, but we know the real metric, right? And the real metric, it's only one, right, Nancy?
Because the real metric is you're talking about it, right? You're talking about their product and you're talking about how they launched it. So when you go out with that teaser and you're able to do it in a way that grabs people's attention and they're wanting to hear the rest of the story, that's the win, right? That's how you pull it through, and then back, and I'm a data girl, so then back to the net metrics to see your results and measure them.
I have a little bit of a different perspective. Yes, the conversation is awesome. That's what you want. The challenge, and if you haven't seen what Jaguar did, it is very bold. It is very different. I would need to think and understand what was going on in the boardroom or wherever the conversation was happening about how radical they wanted to go and how they wanted to take such a significant departure from the heritage of their brand. But marketing, it's more about who are you trying to find? Who are you trying to have products to sell to? And to me, it signals they are looking for a very different customer type now. So from that perspective, I think it makes sense. I don't know what they're doing to their existing customer base, and maybe they don't care, but it is very much a departure, and as someone that has the luxury of presiding over almost 100-year-old brand with that amazing heritage, I don't think I would have that wouldn't be my approach, for sure.
You hit on something that's very important. Jaguar is a legacy brand, and many of your hotels are legacy properties, they're heritage properties. If you want to engage a broader, different, new audience, do not sacrifice the current audience for the benefit of the next audience that's to come. So, what I look at in terms of Jaguar is, what are they leaving behind? And how much of their business is going to be impacted while they try to build a new segment of their business. There's always a time for radical shift. But when a legacy brand does a radical shift, it has to be done with a little bit more sensitivity. And I think that I'll give you an example of where it was done with sensitivity. 10 years ago, and we talked about this last night, 10 or 15 years ago, Cadillac did a total rebrand and repositioning in the market. Their theme was a question that they posed, and it was a really good question. When was the last time your car turned you on? And immediately they shifted it to A, an experience, B, now I'm getting the audience engaged because I'm asking them a question, and they're asking themselves that question. It significantly increased Cadillac sales. So that is a good case study. I'm not sure that how Jaguar is going about this is going to be beneficial to that brand.
Interestingly, I will stand by for now about my opinion because at the end of the day, there's one metric that has not been mentioned yet, which is bookings, right? That's what the sales of the car will kind of give us an idea. Did they make the right bus? Most likely. However, will that audience convert that into sales? I don't know today. I don't have an answer.
I think it's also the long term, right? Exactly what both of you said. Did you get a new customer, but did you sacrifice your current customer? So I think it's going to be really interesting to watch.
Oh yes, and then I'll keep an eye on that one. And in talking about this, transitions and technology, let's open the big elephant in the room, which is obviously artificial intelligence. How many of you are using it? Okay, all right. I mean, I do use it. And I always embrace technology, but like any technology, it comes with challenges. Recently, the new CEO of Brand USA, Fred Dixon, just put together his executive team, and one of the new appointment is a new chief of artificial intelligence, Janet Roche, which it's kind of telling something about the market and the education needed. Going back to you, Nancy, artificial intelligence and this new appointment and how this can support for your properties or anything that you're doing.
So I'm in on AI, but I also realize that 20% of the time it makes things up. So you have to keep that in mind, right? I think where it's going and how it can make us smarter, or again, be able to do some of the things that were transactional and move them into emotional and being able to connect with people instead, there's a lot to do with AI. I think almost every system that we have in marketing is moving into some type of an AI piece, bringing that Gen AI in. AI has been around for a long time, right? It's this Gen AI that everybody's using. And there was a recent study, it was Focusrite, where they were talking about that more people are using ChatGPT specifically, and there's a million AI options out there, than they are for search in certain generations. So if you're not thinking about that today and how your content, couldn't agree with you more, you should have a strategy on content, but you should also have a strategy on AI. I think there's a ton of opportunity for every single business to get smarter and be able to do more of what's really impactful with AI, and I think from a marketing perspective, I think it's going to be endless.
If you go back to when social media was first introduced, everybody jumped on board and said, this is a panacea. There is no such thing as a panacea. I think AI is one of the most extraordinary tools that we could have at our disposal, but it's how you use the tool. From my standpoint, from my perspective, it is all about data analytics. It's about drawing out insights from a multitude of sources of data, which we can't imagine, we can't do. And what is that data really telling you? And how do you then develop actionable marketing strategies and initiatives based upon the insights from the data analysis that AI gave you? The other thing that we're finding with AI is if it's all about the questions that you ask and how you pose it. But the other consideration is AI can be invaluable in helping you understand the difference between demographic and psychographic. How do you begin to target by emotion, not by wallet?
And I love that. Sorry, go ahead, Phil. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of the potential of AI. We actually did a pilot with IBM Watson back in 2015. Before generative AI, but very much in the AI world. We were one of the first two hospitality companies to play with it. And what we built was a trip discovery tool where you could, in natural language, go to our website and type, I'm looking for a trip with my 2 kids and we'd love to have, and to take this thought and this wish and then translate it into a search experience. Few learnings. One, training Watson was awful. It took 6 to 8 months to train Watson on what is a booking, what is a check-in and check-out. It didn't understand any of that context. And then was the job of training it on our 400-member hotels. And it had to be a very structured spreadsheet where we had to input column by column and feed it and then evolve over time. So end to end, it probably took close to a year to build out the pilot experience. On the flip side, there was magic there. And I agree, like, insights and data is super important and super foundational. But we had people, we were collecting feedback, and they said, I feel like I'm searching in the future. This is magical to educate me on something that I had no idea because I started engaging you in a conversation. But it was just like way too far ahead of its time. Now we can stand up an AI-powered chatbot in about 2 hours. And we can send it to our member hotel website, have it read all the content, maybe take internal FAQs, and bring that into the chatbot experience, and it learns immediately. And then as a marketer, we can do fun stuff like, what type of voice do we want to have when the chatbot replies? And then there's a lot of fine tuning. It is far from mature technology. So we've worked with our member hotels on a pilot to put a chatbot on their individual website to really understand it from two perspectives. One, how the customers feel about it. Are they using it? Are they comfortable? What type of things are they looking for? And we have some pretty interesting learnings. But also, is it helping them behind the scenes? Our members shared that on average, they spend 5 to 7 hours a day just answering simple questions. And so when you have a chatbot and you go through and you train it and learns over time, the majority of that actually goes away. So the front-end experience, the guest experience, to be able to answer the 1 or 2 specific questions that the guests have, it's amazing for doing that. But the guests are already pushing us. They're actually asking, oh, I have an existing reservation, can I cancel? Or I want to book, I want to extend my stay. They're comfortable doing that to a chatbot, not even a person, not even pick up the phone. So some of the learnings are, okay, where do the customers see this? Where do they want to go? And then where do our member hotels want to take it? And finding out how to empower those capabilities with the new technologies that are out there. So I think it's almost an unlimited possibility, but to sort of bring it back to the strategic side of it, we're not looking at it as developing an AI strategy. It's more of what's our business strategy, what's our marketing strategy, and how can AI enable that? And in some of the conversations we had, we identified just around creating a new website, 27 different use cases for how we can use AI. Everything from the cool voice-enabled chatbot that sits on the homepage that shows photos and everything to this is an automated way to go out and get content, bring that content in, rewrite that content in your brand voice, translate that content, and then push that out. So getting back to originally the whole conversation around content, if you're able to automate quite a bit of that information, then it opens up so many possibilities all throughout the funnel, inspiration all the way through to booking on the potential of AI as a platform.
I just have to echo the content piece. We're doing the same thing with content, and I found a way to pull the SEO into it. So pull the content, and then how do you really optimize that from an SEO standpoint so people can find your content? Because you don't want a page, you don't want a site that's huge because it gets too large, and then you have other challenges that come along, but really finding the way to make the content be found by whether it's a chatbot or whether it's something else, but really pulling that content through. I agree with you completely.
What I would add to that, because I agree with what you both said, is the following. What we're seeing where AI can also be helpful is how that content is developed. When you think we exist in a world of luxury hospitality, the written content has to be worthy of the audience and has to be worthy of what we're trying to communicate, but so does the visual content. And where we think AI can be used extremely effectively is in the development of content that is appropriate for the audience that's appropriate in terms of the level of sophistication for the product that we're showcasing, and that's going to have that stickiness, that's going to have that engagement.
There's so many questions in my list that might not have the time, because what I'd like to do is to open the floor if there's any questions from the audience at this point, and and just raise your hands if there's any question. Not yet. I just wanted to give the opportunity to the. So kind of wrapping up. So I'm mindful of time since we started later on, and then I think we did our 40 minutes. But I would like to summarize a little bit in saying that authenticity is key to create a content you will deliver, that you will use the right platforms and channels to get to that specific audience, ideally through a mindset perspective, which means it doesn't matter that I am 20, 40 or 60, if I love the ocean and I love to surf waves, this is always my example, by the way, I am a surfer, no matter what. I will look for communicate to me in that language, not in my age language. My age maybe might trigger the communication channel, right? I might say, I want to talk to a person rather than to, and how the opportunity of artificial intelligence enables and facilitates and expedites things that they were laborious and those Excel spreadsheets, Phil, I don't even want to know how painful that was. And maybe as a last question, which is more, how that budget is divided and how you invest that budget. I remember the days I like, I invest that much in this and 30% here and 20% there. So in a very solid, small way, how you shifted that marketing budget investment and your expenditure in, let's say, for the last 5 years, and what you envision, percentage-wise.
Huge change in the last 5 years. I'm sure all of you have seen the same. Obviously, a lot more digital, a lot more technology, a lot more focused on what the customer needs and how do we put that for them. Someone said on the big stage yesterday, they were talking about the one click, right? I mean, hospitality is so far behind. It takes us so long to get somebody through a booking. It's got to be faster and better. And so when you look at your budgets, I think you should look at how do you put the right information in front of the customer and what technology do you need to get there? Like for me, you can go on Instagram and you can buy something in like 3 seconds. Why isn't it that easy from a hotel? Why isn't it something that we can pull through that quickly? Because somebody wants instant gratification. They're like, oop, I love this, look at this, I just saw this TikTok, it's fantastic. Boom, I want that. Why can't we make it easier? So we need to get that technology. And so I think it's really looking at your infrastructure and what you need to set up for the future to get you there. And I think that's part of the budget, but obviously still important in luxury to do all different mediums, but a large majority of it's now digital.
Yeah, we're pretty similar to that. I mean, when we're moving into a period of pretty heavy digital transformation, there's going to be significant spends, new platforms, future-proofing, content creation. So it'll be much heavier, but at the same time, you also have to, I guess, challenge yourself on what are you trying to accomplish. And we've shifted over years. We used to be probably closer to 70-30 direct response to brand, and now we're probably a little more 50-50 there. But again, that's going to change based on what your priorities are as a brand. What I will say, which is kind of interesting and fun, is that I've sort of grown up in the digital world and have definitely a bias there and love talking about AI, but at the same time, we just invested a significant amount of money in print in a coffee table series that we are launching. And talking about channels, something not to forget about, your hotel is absolutely a channel as well, especially if you're part of a collection. We heard from our guests that they're often dreaming of their next vacation while they're on the existing vacation. So this coffee table book is a way of, frankly, breaking through the digital in a very analog way, but giving a completely different experience that's appropriate to the hotel as a channel. So we're not leaving print behind, for sure.
For our clients, we tell them to look at their marketing budget this way. For the investment that needs to be made for bringing their systems up to speed from a technology standpoint, consider it a CapEx. Don't consider it part of the marketing budget, because you're making an investment that can be amortized over a period of time, but you need to make that investment. Second consideration, once the investment is made and you look at how you spend your marketing dollars, ask, when it comes to any form of digital, but any form of traditional media too, is it catalyzation or is it facilitation? Is it catalyzing the interests, catalyzing the bookings, or is it facilitating it? Because you want to be able to catalyze as much as you can and then capture it. But you also need to be able to facilitate the experience. So, we look at this and say, based on the goals, it's going to come down to something very simple. What's the return on investment? Because you have to be able to look at every dollar you spend from a marketing standpoint and say, is it impacting the business? Is it driving bookings? Is it putting heads in beds? Whatever the case may be, you have to be able to develop those metrics, because otherwise, it's like you're using a Ouija board.
Absolutely. Metrics, 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 right, is the language of all marketeers. And I would like to thank you. We're just a little bit. Absolutely. Please.
I'll share ours. We're very blessed. We have a wonderful technology team that we work with, and we truly see each other as partners. And I think you have to, with what's happening in marketing. If you're not connected from that technology, that CIO, that's a big challenge. Whereas Paul and I work on every project together, and that way there's buy-in, by the way, and we've really thought through not only today but the future.
Yeah, I think we're very similar. I mean, frankly, it starts with alignment at the executive level and the company strategy, and what are the priorities, what are the main objectives that we're pursuing this year, and then having that alignment across the organization and to supporting that is super important. And then, yeah, technology, if you even just take AI as an example, it is so tied into data. It is so tied into integrations with systems. I joke around with our head of IT, and he's always like, you're the guy that goes out on stage and promises some crazy stuff, and I got to figure out how to build it. But it has to be a partnership, for sure. From a company resource perspective, from making it happen. And oh, by the way, the one thing we didn't mention that I think you have to mention in the AI world, it's also regulations, GDPR, risk, and others, which, I have a good working relationship with our chief counsel and our IT team to figure out where I can push and where we have to be very conservative, especially with so many of our hotels being in Europe. So that's another area of partnership as well. But it's got to be together. I think the days of a centralized IT that doesn't get what's going on, I don't think that can even exist anymore with the way things are.
That's a great question. Any other question from the audience, please?
Yeah, I think our investment, I don't see it as print related to trust, because it's more of what is the source, but the contributors that we have in our coffee tables series, it is local artisans, it is our GMs, it is the families, but there's, we do value external expertise as well, travel writers as well, to bring this to life. So we don't see print as a way of addressing that, but in what we do with print, that we want to source the right type of contributors in order to deliver that authentic messaging that we want to have in the series.
And I think it's also a question of, is it paid or earned? You know, because quite frankly, if we're talking about luxury hospitality being an experience, there's some people who actually like to pick up a magazine or pick up a newspaper, whatever the case may be. So we're actually seeing a sort of resurgence of traditional media. But I think to Phil's point, you know, what I'd like to see is a big shift in paid media so that it's not advertising. Yeah, I would rather see the lines blurred between paid and earned, what we used to call many years ago advertorial, okay? But it also depends, as Phil said, on who writes it, who shoots it. So you're creating something that should be as compelling as anything else in your war chest, but that understanding the tactility of it. So I do not believe in saying that a budget should be predominantly digital, because like we talked about with Jaguar, there's still an audience who really finds print compelling, whatever that may be.
And certainly, we could keep going on, and I'm mindful of the time. I will say something that we all share. The marketing field is always the one that we have so many opinions and so many points of view, and we have to filter and be very kind of breathing and bringing calm and listening and working together. And in that note, I would like to thank you once more for your contribution today at this panel, but we could continue with so many questions because there's so much metaverse, name it. I could go on. And thank you everybody for being here. And then if you haven't had any food, I'm sure there will be some lunch out there.
Yeah.